In this lesson, we will solve proportion equations using cross multiplication. A proportion is a statement that two ratios are equal. And one of the most convenient ways to solve these types of problems involving ratio and proportion is to cross multiply. If you have a fraction or a rational expression where you have one rational expression or fraction on one side and one rational expression or fraction on the other side, you can use cross multiplication because the cross products rules state that the cross multiplying of those sides are equal. So let AB represent one rational expression and CD represent another. And again, this is only the case when you have one rational expression on one side and one on the other. So it means I can cross multiply A and D together. That's going to equal one side of the equation. And then C times B, that's going to be the other side of the equations. And they are said to be equal, which means you can simply solve that equation if you want to solve using cross multiplication method. So let's do an example and see what that entails. Here we're given a proportion problem. X over 63 is equal to 5 over 9. We're going to use the cross multiplication method to solve this. Now it doesn't matter which side that you cross first. I always like to cross the variable side first because that's going to be on my left side. And then when I cross my numbers or my integers, that's going to be on the right side. So let's begin. 9 times x equals 9x. 63 times 5 equals 315. Last step to solving this is to divide by 9. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. And x equals, you got it, 35. And there you have it. We solved a ratio and proportion problem using the cross multiplication method. Application involving ratio and proportion. Jim earns $1,200 in 14 days. At this rate, how much will he earn in 30 days? Here's an example of a ratio and proportion problem in which we're going to use cross multiplication to solve. So you're going to look at the first number that is mentioned in the word problem. That is always going to be your numerator. The second number that is mentioned is going to be your denominator. And that's one of your rational expressions. On the other side is you're going to have your third number. The third number that is mentioned, you have to decide whether it goes on top based on what you're comparing. So if we look again at the very beginning, we're comparing amount earned to days. So the third number that is mentioned is days. So that means that number is going to go on the bottom on the other side of the equation, which means that I will not have a number in the numerator's place on the right side. So instead, that is where you put your unknown. Anything that's missing, you put an X there. So that is how you would set it up. Now that we have it set up, let's go ahead and solve. I'm going to start with the variable side first, simply because I like to put my variables on the left and my numbers on the right. But you can do it any way that works best for you. So 14 times x equals 14x. 30 times 1,200 equals 36,000. So I have 14x on one side and 36,000 on the other. Last step to solving this equation is to do what? That's correct. Divide both sides by 14 and x equals $2,571, and that is the amount he will have earned in 30 days. Let's go to problem number 2. In 2 hours, Gianna can drive 130 miles. Well, how far will she have driven in 5 hours? So again, the first number that is mentioned goes on top. The second number that is mentioned goes on bottom. The third number that is mentioned, you have to decide whether it goes on top based on what you're comparing. Let's see what we're comparing. Let's go back to the beginning of the problem. Hours to miles. The third number that is mentioned is 5 hours. Hours is on top, so on the other side of the equation, I'm going to put hours, the 5 on top, 5 hours on top, which means that my denominator would be empty. So that is where I'm going to place my unknown. Once you have the problem all set up, then you're ready to cross multiply. I'm going to go ahead and begin with my variable side. X times 2 equals 2x. 130 times 5 equals, what is it? 650. That's correct. Last step to solving this is to do what? Yes, divide both sides by 2. And what will x equal? I'll give you a moment to think about it. So if you did it correct, you should have 325 miles. And that's the value that was missing. We wanted to know how far the distance that she will have driven in 5 hours. So that would be 325 miles. And there you have it, solving ratio and proportion problems using cross multiplication. Here are similar triangles. Whenever you have similar geometric shapes and you are missing a side, you can use ratio and proportion to help you find the missing side. As long as you remember that you have to compare it with its corresponding side. So for example, this side here on the bottom of the big triangle, which side does it correspond with on the little triangle? So this is 20. So on the other one, what side will correspond to that? That's correct. The bottom here of this 8 meters. Okay. Same thing if I go to the right side here. On the little triangle, the side that corresponds is this side. And on the little one, if I were to compare this side, on the big one, the side that corresponds to it would be this side. So you have to always remember to make sure you compare them to their corresponding sides. There are more than one way to set it up, but as long as you follow their corresponding sides, you'll always get it correct. Okay, you won't have any problems. All right, so here I'm going to just pick some sides here. So I did this side here, bottom 20. The corresponding side to that would be 8. So notice I put that on the bottom. And then 15 here. So the corresponding side to that would be the x that I'm looking for. Another way I could have also compared them, I could have done x over 8 on one side of the equation, and the side that corresponds to that would be on the other side, would be 15 to 20. And that would work. You'll get the same exact answer. The bottom line is, as long as your sides correspond to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and solve this cross multiplication. X times 20 equals 20x, and then 8 times 15 is 120. So I'm going to have 20x on one side and 120 on the other. Last step to solving this is to divide both sides by 20, and x equals 6. And here we're talking about meters. So the missing side was 6 meters. And there you have it, solving similar geometric shapes, or in this case, similar triangles using cross multiplication. Rational equations using cross multiplication. We can also use cross multiplying to solve two rational equations. So again, that is always the case. You can use that method if you have one rational expression on one side and one on the other. It doesn't matter which side you start with in terms of crossing, as long as when you multiply one side, that goes on one side of the equation. When you go to the other cross, it goes on the other side. So I'm going to start here, 2 times x minus 1. That's going to be on one side. And 4 times x plus 5 is going to be on the other side. Next, I'm going to use the distributive property. I have to distribute the 2 times x, and then 2 times negative 1. I'm also going to distribute the 4 times x, and then 4 times 5. Next, I'm going to combine like terms, combine my x's with the x's and the regular numbers with the regular numbers. That's going to involve subtracting 4x from each side and then adding 2 to each side. Next, I'm going to divide by negative 2, and x equals negative 11. So there you have it. I've solved the ratio and proportion problem using cross multiplication, or what we call a rational equation using cross multiplication. Problem solving using rational equations. So our objectives here is to solve an application problem involving ratio and proportion. This is going to be a problem specifically about work. Sam and Frank work in a plant that manufactures automobiles. Sam can complete a quality control tour of the plant in 3 hours, while his assistant Frank needs a little bit more time. Frank needs 7 hours to complete the same job. Now, the regional manager is coming to inspect the plant facilities, so both Sam and Frank are directed to complete a quality control tour together. Well, how long will it take them if they do the job together? So we're going to solve this rational equation, and we're going to let x be the time that it takes both of them to do it together. So we note that we're going to use 1 over x to represent the fraction part of the job that each guy can complete in an hour. Okay, so if 1 over x is 1 hour, and who was it? Sam can do the job in 3 hours. So if we were to write that as a fraction as far as the part of the job completed in an hour, it would be 1 over 3, 1/3. Frank does the job in 7 hours, so it's going to be 1 over 7. And recall we said that x is going to represent how long it takes them to do it together. Okay, so for them to complete the job together, that fraction 1 over x. All right, so now that we have this table of value filled out here, where we can kind of organize our information, let's see how we're going to set up this equation. So here, part of the job that Sam can complete in 1 hour would be 1/3, recall, because he can do it in 3 hours, but in 1 hour it'd be 1/3, plus the part of the job that Frank can complete in an hour, that would be 1/7. That's going to be equal to the part of the job that they can complete together in an hour, and that would be 1 over x. So there's my equation. And once you get your equation, step 1, when you have a rational equation, recall you have to find the LCD. Here we have three unique factors. We have 3, we have 7, and we have x. They all appear at most in either denominator once, so all of them together is the LCD. So when I multiply it all together, I get 21x. What do I do with that LCD? I'm going to multiply all 3 parts of the equation by the LCD. Next, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out any common factors, something from the top that matches something from the bottom. I'm going to bring down the remaining terms. So recall that process. Always get rid of your rational expressions and leave you with a clean equation to solve for x. So now all I need to do is combine terms on the left side. 7x plus 3x equals 10x. Last step to solve this equation is to divide by 10. And here you have x equals 21 over 10. We're talking about time here in terms of how long it takes. If you do 21 divided by 10, what you're going to get is roughly 2 1/10 of an hour, or you can say 2.1 hours. So Frank and Sam can complete the quality control tour in 2.1 hours. And there you have it, solving a rational equation. Okay, that's it for this lesson. Thank you for watching MVP Tutorials by your instructor, Dr. Speights. I hope you'll join me in the next lesson. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye for now.